How do we find courage even in the midst of dark times? That's our question today. And we're going to use a brilliant Mary Oliver poem that she wrote early in her career to explore this notion of courage. How do we find courage even when we are surrounded by difficult situations and times? Seems like that's a pretty appropriate question to ask these days. Okay, the poem is called A Dream of Trees. And again, it is a brilliant poem, in my opinion, by the poet Mary Oliver. And the poem goes like this. There is a thing in me, there is a thing in me that dreamed of trees, a quiet house, some green and modest acres. There is a thing in me, there is a thing in me that dreamed of trees, a quiet house, some green and modest acres, a little way from every troubling town, a little way from factories, schools, laments. I would have time, I thought. I would have time, I thought, and time to spare, and time to spare, with only streams and birds for company, to build out of my life a few wild stanzas. And then it came to me, and then it came to me that so was death, that so was death, a little way away from everywhere. There is a thing in me still dreams of trees. There is a thing in me. There is a thing in me still dreams of trees. But let it go. But let it go. Homesick for moderation. Half the world's artists shrink or fall away. Homesick for moderation. Half the world's artists shrink or fall away. If any finds solution, let him tell it. If any finds solution, let her tell it. Meanwhile, I bend my heart toward lamentation, whereas the times implore our true involvement. The blades of every crisis point the way, point the way. The blades of every crisis point the way. I would it were not so. I would it were not so. But so it is. Whoever, whoever made music of a calm day. When I first heard these lines, particularly those last lines, which kind of gives you this absolute jolt at the end, I was struck by this poem from the first time I heard it. And I've probably read it, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of times. I've read this poem a lot. Because what this poem, I think, is saying to us, the reason it is so brilliant, the reason why it gives us this re up on our ability to find courage, is that it tells us that these difficulties are there. They are not going away. Doesn't mean that we're not going to do what we can to push up against the circumstances. This poem, remember, I think I mentioned it earlier, was written in the 60s and I think was focused at the Vietnam War. And so there is a sense that we need to find our courage even in dark times, even in difficult times. That's not so easy to do. Have you noticed? Have you noticed? And if we remember that the word courage itself, core means heart, courage. So I've always said that courage means to know, to be connected to your heart, and to live by your heart. I think that, um, you know, if we think about, if you think back in your own life, when there was some kind of difficulty that you just stayed with and you found what were the opportunities inside that difficulty, and they might have been thin, There might have not been many difficulties, mostly difficulty. I meant to say there might not be that many opportunities within the difficulty. And yet, think about how your life shifted. Hopefully so. Think about that. And I was thinking, you can tell how big a person is. I saw this quote recently, by what it takes to discourage them. In other words, think about that word courage, to know your heart and to follow it. So, how much discouragement this is to have us not follow our heart, not even know our heart. A wonderful thing about these poems, this one and others, is that it helps us, even when we're feeling discouraged, even when we're feeling down, and we are discouraged by politics or social challenges, societal challenges, or particularly ecological challenges. This reminds us to find that sense of purpose, to find that sense of vision, even in those difficult times. And remember, if she says, half the world's artists shrink or fall away, homesick for moderation. If any find the solution, let him tell it. Meanwhile, says the protagonist in the poem, I bend my heart toward lamentation, where the times implore our true involvement. The blades of every crisis point the way. I would it were not so. I wish it were not so. But so it is. Whoever made music of a calm day. Thank you so much for your listening ear. Until next time and next poem, take good care of yourself. And if you can, someone else.